Behind the bathtub access panel, where there should have been nothing but empty pipe space, there was something that did not belong there. A black plastic bundle, carefully wrapped in layers of tape. The plastic crackled beneath my trembling fingers. The object felt ice cold despite the 104-degree Arizona heat pressing against the house. The smell of old porcelain and rotting waterproof sealant tasted like time itself. Bitter. Sour. It crawled into the back of my throat. I was 63 years old, married for 21 years. And in the next 11 seconds I realized my wife had been planning to take everything from me. Welcome back to Dad's Revenge Real Life. Grab yourself a drink, a few snacks, get comfortable. And remember this. The people in these stories always had the chance to do the right thing. They simply chose not to. Subscribe for more emotional and dramatic family stories. And leave a comment with the number 1 if you want to hear this entire story. It started with the first brutal swing of a sledgehammer, echoing through the cramped bathroom. I wanted to surprise Karen. She had complained for years about this avocado green bathtub straight out of the 1980s. The second swing hit harder. The porcelain cracked apart in giant pieces, sharp and brittle like crushed peanut shells. But the thing that shattered at 3:17 that afternoon was not the bathtub. It was my entire life. Inside the black bundle were 3 things: a stack of $100 bills, a cheap flip phone from a convenience store, and a folded sheet of lined paper. I opened it slowly. Karen's handwriting. Clean, slanted, precise. The handwriting of a senior insurance claims manager. The woman I had shared my life with for over 2 decades. The same woman who kissed my cheek before work that very morning. She had hidden this here. My chest tightened instantly. My heartbeat pounded against my ears louder than the sledgehammer had minutes earlier. The paper contained a cold and calculated plan written in bullet points. Why would my wife need a burner phone? Why hide thousands of dollars beneath the bathtub? The answer sat right there in my hands. This was not simply a divorce plan. It was a financial trap designed to leave me homeless and destroyed in my 60s. She wanted to paint me as mentally unstable. I collapsed onto the bathroom floor surrounded by razor-sharp porcelain shards. They dug into my skin, but I felt nothing. Nothing except a hollow emptiness spreading through my chest. Imagine discovering that the person you trusted most in the world was secretly digging your grave while smiling in your face every single day. The bathtub had shattered open, and so had the truth. Karen's game had started long before this moment, and without meaning to, I had just uncovered the very first card she never wanted me to see. Karen was a woman obsessed with perfection. She worked in insurance claims. Her entire job revolved around finding mistakes. A missing comma. A spelling error buried inside a contract. Nothing escaped Karen's eyes. She brought that same precision into our home. Everything had its place. Clothes were organized by color. Every spice jar in the kitchen carried a neatly printed label. Back then, I thought it was care. I was proud to have a wife like her. For 21 years, I showed love, the only way a man like me knew how. I was an engineer. I did not buy expensive roses. I was never good with romantic speeches. Instead, I took care of the house. I oiled every door hinge so it would never squeak and disturb Karen's sleep. I fixed leaking pipes in the middle of the night so she could rest peacefully. I scraped old paint from the porch with my own hands so she would have a quiet place to read in the afternoons. My devotion lived inside every inch of this house. I truly believed I had been a good husband. But standing there looking at the hidden cash and the burner phone scattered across the bathroom floor, I suddenly felt pathetic. My loyalty meant nothing compared to the cold calculation behind those objects. My friends, do you understand that feeling? The woman I was willing to protect for the rest of my life had secretly turned our home into a battlefield. She buried ugly secrets directly beneath my feet. I slowly stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the Arizona heat still burned across the neighborhood like fire. But inside me, something icy had begun spreading through my chest. My eyes drifted toward our wedding photograph, hanging in the living room. Karen's smile looked radiant in that picture. Her eyes looked warm, loving, honest. But now that smile looked like the mask of a master actress. How long had she been lying to me? The pressure building in my throat became unbearable. I could not sit there and wait to be destroyed. I needed the truth behind the handwritten note. I grabbed the cheap flip phone from the floor. My fingers shook violently as I pressed the power button. The tiny green screen flickered alive inside the dark bathroom. One unread message. And the moment the first line appeared on the screen, my heart nearly stopped. The sender was not a stranger. It was a code name. The code name on the screen was only 2 capital letters. MR. The phone had a single bar of battery left. It blinked weakly like my breathing. I did not open the message right away. I set the phone down beside me. My palms were soaked with sweat. Then I picked up the folded sheet of lined paper again, slowly, carefully. The sound of old paper crackling filled the terrifying silence around me. This was not a diary. It was a plan. At the top corner of the page, Karen had written one word in large red letters: timeline. It was the timeline of my destruction. Everything had been divided into stages. Phase 1 began 6 months earlier. Beside that date was a sentence that made my blood run cold. Push refinancing. My head started spinning instantly. 6 months ago, Karen began talking about refinancing this house. She said we needed extra cash to strengthen our retirement investments. She sounded convincing, gentle, caring, thoughtful. I trusted her completely. I signed the first stack of paperwork without hesitation. I believed I was protecting our future together. But the truth was far uglier. I had been signing away my own financial execution. Beneath that line was another bullet point: maintain supportive tone. The words supportive tone had been underlined twice, like a reminder to herself. She needed to keep acting like the loving wife. She needed to smile, speak softly, stay affectionate, so I would never suspect anything. Every moment of kindness she showed me during the past 6 months had been part of a psychological strategy, a sedative, something to keep me calm while she slowly guided me into the trap. The coldness from the paper seemed to crawl directly into my chest. Outside the bathroom window, the 104-degree Arizona heat still shimmered over the pavement. But inside this room I felt frozen solid. My eyes drifted back toward the stack of cash. $8,000. She must have withdrawn it slowly from our joint account. Small amounts at a time so I would never notice. Karen had been building an escape route for herself using the sweat of my entire life. The sadness inside me hardened into something darker. Anger. Not loud anger. Not rage. The quiet kind. The kind that settles deep inside your bones. I pushed myself off the floor, stepping carefully around the shattered porcelain pieces scattered across the bathroom. Then I picked up the flip phone again. I had to open the message from MR. I needed to know who was helping my wife destroy me. My thumb pressed the inbox button. The conversation appeared instantly, and what I found inside was worse than the money, worse than the burner phone, worse than the refinancing plan. Karen was not only planning to steal my assets, she was talking about me. And the name she used for me in those messages revealed a truth far more horrifying than betrayal itself. The burner phone cast a faint blue glow across the shattered bathroom floor. I opened the newest message from MR. Has he signed the papers yet? He. That single word hit me harder than the sledgehammer ever could. 21 years of marriage. 21 years of shared meals, shared struggles, shared dreams. And in the eyes of my wife and the man she was secretly working with, I was no longer a husband. I was simply him, a problem to manage, an obstacle to remove cleanly. My fingers trembled as I scrolled upward through the older messages. An entire universe of lies unfolded in front of me. They had been texting each other every single day, inside this house, while I stood downstairs cooking dinner for Karen, while I repaired things around the home, while I believed I was building a peaceful future with my wife. Then I found the message that shattered whatever remained of my heart. He trusts me completely. Do not worry. Everything is moving exactly as planned. In 21 years, he has never once checked my private accounts. That was me. Karen knew my weakness better than anyone else. I trusted her without limits. I handed her every bank card, every savings document. I focused on my engineering work and let her manage our finances because I believed marriage was built on trust, not suspicion. That trust had become the sharpest weapon she could use against me. My honesty had become a joke to her. The pain inside me slowly turned into disgust. I stared at the burner phone while my heartbeat slammed violently against my ribs. My ears rang so loudly I could barely breathe. I unfolded the timeline paper once more. The dates lined up perfectly with Karen's so-called business trips. The insurance disaster assignments she claimed required travel across state lines. The nights she said there was no signal in remote areas. Those were not work trips. Those were meetings with MR. The two of them had been building this plan together while I sat at home waiting for my wife to return. For the first time in my life, I truly felt stupid. I had spent 21 years sleeping beside a traitor, without ever seeing her real face. Questions crashed through my head one after another. Who was MR? What kind of power did he have over Karen? How long had he been helping her build this financial trap? How deep did this scheme really go? I needed answers. And more importantly, I needed someone whose judgment I could still trust. Then I thought of Frank. Frank Delaney, an old friend. A retired private investigator who specialized in financial fraud cases before he left the force. If anyone could untangle this nightmare, it was him. I grabbed my personal phone and dialed his number with shaking hands. The line rang twice before Frank answered. I barely managed to explain what I had found before silence fell across the call. Then Frank spoke in a low, serious voice that instantly made my stomach tighten. This is not just a normal affair. Frank's voice sounded rough through the phone. Heavy. Tired. I sat silently on the edge of the shattered bathroom floor while he analyzed everything I had told him. Frank had spent 30 years working as a private investigator. He had seen every ugly corner of human greed imaginable. After hearing the story about the broken bathtub and the timeline paper, he stayed quiet for a long time before finally giving me his conclusion. An affair at 60 is not about emotions, Frank said slowly. It is about accounting. The sentence lodged itself deep inside my brain. An affair in your 30s is chaos. An affair in your 60s is bookkeeping. They are not cheating because of passion, Frank continued. They are cheating because they want an exit strategy. His explanation hit me like freezing water. He was right. Karen was not some foolish young woman blinded by romance. She was a woman in her 50s who understood money very well, and MR clearly did too. They were not chasing love. They were building a financial escape route for old age. And that escape route was being funded by draining every drop of value from my life. Frank started breaking their plan apart piece by piece. The refinancing push was the critical move. If I signed the mortgage paperwork, the bank would release a large amount of cash against the house. That money would quietly move into accounts Karen had already prepared behind my back. Then she would disappear with the cash, and Michael Reeves, while I stayed behind carrying crushing debt. The bank would eventually seize the house. At 63 years old, I would lose everything and end up homeless. The anger inside me stopped exploding outward. Instead, it compressed into something colder, more dangerous, like gunpowder packed tightly inside steel. I gripped the burner phone harder in my hand. I could not allow them to win. I had worked my entire life to build this home. I was not about to hand it over to two parasites. Frank told me to stay calm. He said he would dig deeper into the real identity behind the initials MR financial advisor, scam artist, professional manipulator. He needed a few hours to contact some old sources and pull records. But before hanging up, Frank gave me one final warning. Do not scare them. Not yet. Keep acting like the same trusting husband she thinks you are. I ended the call and stared at the ruined bathroom around me. Broken porcelain covered the floor like fragments of my marriage. I cleaned everything carefully before Karen returned home from work. Then I hid the burner phone and the timeline document somewhere safer. 3 hours later, my personal phone vibrated. A message from Frank. I found MR. My heartbeat stopped for a second. His name is Michael Reeves. I immediately searched the name online, and what appeared on the screen revealed a horrifying secret from Michael Reeves's past. A secret that explained exactly why Karen had chosen him for this financial heist. Michael Reeves. The name glowing on my computer screen filled me with disgust. I stared at his photograph for a long moment. A man in his 50s, smooth-combed hair, an expensive tailored suit, the polished smile of a successful financial professional. But beneath that polished image was rot. Frank had sent me 2 old news articles from 5 years earlier. Michael Reeves had once worked as an independent financial advisor. Then his license was revoked after his involvement in a retirement fund fraud scheme targeting elderly clients. He was not some amateur con artist. He was a predator, a professional one. Michael specialized in finding legal loopholes to drain people dry without leaving fingerprints behind. He was not simply my wife's lover. He was the architect of the trap closing around my life. The combination suddenly terrified me. Karen understood contracts, insurance claims, and documentation. Michael understood financial laundering and asset movement. Together, they were the perfect team. Their target was never a few $1,000s hidden beneath a bathtub. They wanted everything. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. Every dollar I had spent my life earning. A chill crawled down my spine. If I had not accidentally smashed that bathtub open earlier today, I would have walked blindly into financial execution. I would have signed every document with a smile, while Karen held my hand and pretended to love me. The truth was brutal. But for the first time, since discovering the hidden package, I stopped feeling helpless. The pain inside me hardened into cold clarity. I was not going to sit quietly and die financially. If Karen and Michael wanted to build a trap, then I would build one of my own. I called Frank again and asked for legal help. He immediately gave me one name: Susan Keller, one of the best attorneys in Arizona for complex divorce and financial fraud disputes. An hour later, I sat inside Susan Keller's office with the burner phone and Karen's timeline document spread across her desk. Susan examined everything with razor-sharp focus. She did not look shocked. Clearly, she had seen marriages rot from the inside before. Then she leaned back in her chair and delivered a sentence that changed everything. "We are going to let them make their next move," she said calmly, "but we are going to redirect the money." That afternoon, our counterattack officially began. I would confront Karen that evening, not openly, not emotionally. I would have to look directly into the eyes of the woman who had betrayed me for years and pretend I knew nothing. I had to keep acting like the same trusting fool she believed I was. The harmless husband standing quietly at the edge of his own life. On the drive home, my stomach twisted into knots. Then my phone rang. Karen. Her voice sounded warm and sweet through the speaker. Gentle, loving, perfectly rehearsed. She said she was driving home from her business trip. Then she softly reminded me to prepare the paperwork for our bank appointment next Monday. The refinancing meeting. The final step of their plan. The psychological war had officially begun. I pulled into the driveway and stepped back into the house that no longer felt like my home. And the moment I walked through the front door, the burner phone hidden in my pocket suddenly started vibrating violently. The sound of keys rattling at the front door echoed through the house. Karen was home. I took a slow breath and forced myself to stay calm. Then I stepped into the living room, still covered in porcelain dust and drywall debris. I wanted her to see me busy repairing the house like always. The loyal husband. The harmless man she believed she controlled completely. Karen walked inside looking elegant in her business clothes. Perfect posture. Perfect makeup. Perfect smile. She stepped toward me and kissed my cheek softly. The scent of her familiar perfume filled my nose. But now it felt poisonous. Like venom from a snake. "You're home already?" I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. Karen smiled warmly when she noticed the destroyed bathroom. "Oh, honey, you finally ripped out that old bathtub." Her tone was gentle, sweet, supportive. Exactly like the words she had underlined twice on the timeline paper. Maintain supportive tone. Hearing that fake sweetness in person made my stomach twist. She asked if I was tired. Asked whether I needed help cleaning up the mess. The performance was flawless. She played the loving wife so naturally it was terrifying. Later that evening, we sat together at the dinner table. Karen casually talked about her recent business trip while eating. Insurance contracts. Complex claims. Long meetings. Every sentence carefully polished. Then, almost effortlessly, she guided the conversation toward Monday's bank appointment. "Michael Reeves is extremely busy," she said softly. "It took a lot of effort to arrange this meeting." There it was again. Michael Reeves. She said his name without even blinking. "All you need to do is bring your ID and sign where I marked the papers," she continued. "Michael and I will handle the rest." Then she gently placed her hand over mine. Her skin felt soft, but to me it felt like handcuffs locking around my wrist. I looked directly into my wife's eyes and forced myself to nod calmly. "All right," I said quietly. "I trust you." Inside, my chest rage crashed like wildfire. I was sitting across from the woman planning to destroy my life while pretending to love me over dinner, and I had to hide everything behind silence. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. Karen's phone suddenly lit up on the table. At the exact same second, the burner phone hidden inside my pocket began vibrating violently against my leg. My chest tightened instantly. I could physically feel both phones reacting together, one glowing on the dinner table, one trembling secretly against my skin. Karen froze for half a second. Then she quickly flipped her phone face down and forced out a nervous laugh. "Spam messages," she said casually. "Those advertising companies never stop." A lie. Another effortless lie. She stood up almost immediately and walked toward the bathroom, avoiding eye contact. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, I pulled the burner phone from my pocket with shaking hands. A new message from Michael Reeves. I opened it, and the words on the screen changed everything. Monday was not simply a refinancing appointment. It was a deadline. A deadline tied to blackmail. Karen had desperately been hiding from me this entire time. The fateful Monday finally arrived. The Arizona sky that morning was perfectly blue without a single cloud. Heat already radiated from the asphalt before noon. I wore the most formal suit I owned. Karen walked beside me, looking as elegant and confident as ever. Together we entered the VIP office inside the downtown bank. The room felt unnaturally quiet. Only the low hum of the air conditioning filled the silence. Michael Reeves was already waiting for us. He stood immediately and shook my hand with a polished professional smile. His expensive suit was flawless. The heavy scent of cologne drifted toward me as he began performing his role as the trustworthy financial advisor. He talked about numbers, interest rates, retirement optimization, a brighter future after refinancing our home. Karen sat beside me, supporting every word with perfect timing. Every now and then she looked toward me with warm, encouraging eyes. A masterpiece of manipulation. Michael finally pushed the thick stack of paperwork across the glass table. Yellow tabs marked every place where I needed to sign. "Walter," he said smoothly, while handing me an expensive black ink pen, "all you need to do is sign these pages. After that, the funds will be released, and your retirement future will be fully secured." His voice sounded calm, persuasive, professional. I held the pen in my hand, but I did not sign. Instead, I stared quietly at the tiny printed lines buried inside the banking documents, because now I understood exactly what would happen after my signature touched that paper. The refinancing funds would disappear directly into a shell company connected to Michael Reeves. Karen would become the primary beneficiary, and I would be left carrying catastrophic debt without realizing it until everything was already gone. Slowly, I lifted my eyes toward my wife. Karen was still smiling, but now I noticed the tension underneath it. Her fingers tapped nervously against the glass table. Tiny movements, tiny cracks in the performance. She was anxious, desperate for this meeting to end quickly. Inside me, rage climbed higher and higher like fire rising through gasoline. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to smash Michael Reeves directly in his lying face. I wanted to scream at Karen about 21 years of betrayal. But I stayed still. For now. Pause for 1 second. Comment number 3 if you think Walter should expose them immediately. Comment number 5 if you think he should wait a little longer. In the last story, many people commented number 7 because they had no idea what they would do in this situation. The room fell completely silent. Karen and Michael Reeves both watched me carefully, waiting for my signature. I slowly spun the pen between my fingers. Then I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. Neither of them reacted at first. They assumed I was reaching for identification documents. Instead, I pulled out 2 things: a cheap black flip phone and a folded sheet of lined paper, still dusted with tiny traces of white porcelain. I placed both items gently on top of the bank documents. The smile vanished instantly from Michael Reeves's face. Karen's skin turned ghost white in less than a second. Her eyes locked onto the burner phone and the timeline paper like she had just seen a dead body rise from the floor. Her lips trembled violently, but no words came out. The final confrontation had officially begun, and only seconds later, the office door suddenly opened. The arrival of a third person would turn this refinancing meeting into a living nightmare for both scammers. The flip phone and the folded sheet of lined paper rested silently on the glass table. They looked like evidence pulled straight from a grave. Karen stared at the burner phone with wide, terrified eyes. Her entire body froze, stiff like cracked porcelain. The confidence of the experienced insurance manager disappeared instantly. Every trace of control vanished from her face. Michael Reeves frowned sharply. He tried to maintain the composure of a seasoned predator. Clearing his throat, he forced out an awkward smile. "Walter," he said carefully, "what exactly is this? We should finish signing the paperwork." I looked directly into my wife's eyes. My voice remained calm, dangerously calm. "You forgot these behind the bathtub, Karen." The sentence exploded inside the VIP office like a bomb. Karen began trembling violently. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She covered her lips with one shaking hand as if trying to stop herself from screaming. Michael Reeves immediately reached toward the timeline paper. But I moved faster. My rough hand slammed down across the document before he could touch it. Then I slowly unfolded the paper across the table beneath the bright office lights. "Push refinancing. Maintain supportive tone." Karen's handwriting stared back at all of us like a confession carved into stone. "The performance is over," I said quietly. Then I turned toward Michael Reeves. "Or should I call you MR?" Neither of them spoke. "So tell me," I continued, "where exactly did you want me to sign?" "Sign so the two of you could disappear with my retirement money and build yourselves a comfortable little escape plan for old age." I pressed the power button on the burner phone. The audio message echoed through the suffocating silence of the room. "Has he signed the papers yet?" Michael Reeves shot up from his chair instantly. He knew the game was finished. "I have nothing to do with this," he stammered while frantically grabbing his briefcase. "This is a private family issue." Then he turned toward the exit, desperate to run. But he was too late. The VIP office door suddenly swung open. Susan Keller entered the room alongside two bank security officers and a representative from the Financial Regulatory Division. Susan looked directly at Michael Reeves with a cold, unforgiving smile. "Mr. Reeves," she said firmly, "you are hereby suspended from all transactions connected to this case. Evidence regarding financial fraud and abuse of fiduciary trust was submitted to economic crime investigators 2 hours ago." Michael Reeves's face completely collapsed. Without another word, he pushed past the security officers and stumbled out of the room like a hunted criminal. Then there were only 3 people left inside the office. Me, Karen, and Susan Keller. Karen slowly collapsed into the leather chair. The mask she had worn for 21 years finally shattered. Her eyes filled with panic and desperation. "Walter, please," she whispered weakly. "Let me explain. It is not what you think." I pointed directly at the timeline paper. "The truth is right there." My voice cracked slightly for the first time all day. "For 21 years, I loved you with everything I had. And all this time you were calculating numbers and planning how to throw me out into the street." Susan Keller calmly placed the divorce documents onto the table. Karen lost every legal claim to the house and the joint financial accounts. She signed the papers in absolute silence while tears dripped onto the contracts. But they were not tears of heartbreak. They were tears for a failed plan. Karen walked away with nothing. And for the first time since smashing that bathtub open, I finally felt something close to peace. I stepped outside the bank into the brutal Arizona sunlight. The heat still burned across the city streets, but the crushing weight inside my chest had finally lifted. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. Because later that evening, when I returned home to finish cleaning the destruction inside the bathroom, I discovered one final hidden secret buried beneath the foundation of the house. And what I found made me realize Karen's plan had never been only about stealing my money. The sharp snap of the new bathtub settling into place echoed softly through the empty bathroom. I ran a clean line of white silicone around the edges with my own hands. Everything looked fresh now. Clean. Peaceful. The smell of mold and deception was finally gone. No more dark secrets hidden behind the walls. And the final thing I discovered beneath the foundation of the house was not money. It was worse. A fake medical file. Karen had secretly been collecting fabricated medical records designed to prove I was mentally declining in old age. She planned to strip away my legal independence piece by piece. She wanted the courts to see me as unstable so she could control everything legally. That was the moment I truly understood something terrifying. Human cruelty has no bottom. Later that evening, I sat alone on the sunlit front porch. My story had finally reached its end. But what about yours? My friend's financial abuse against older people is not just something that happens in movies. Sometimes it happens inside your own bedroom. Sometimes it hides behind the warm smile of the person you trust most. As we grow older, we often hand over complete trust to the people closest to us. And that trust becomes the perfect opening for financial predators. So remember this lesson I learned the hardest possible way. Transparency is love after 60. Never surrender total control of your life to another person. Not even someone you have shared a bed with for 20 years. Always check the numbers yourself. Staying aware does not weaken love. It protects love. And it protects you. I lost a wife, but I reclaimed my life. At 63 years old, I still have this house. I still have my freedom. I still have my dignity. The past has finally been washed clean, just like that brand new bathtub sitting inside the bathroom now. And for the first time in years, I am ready to begin a new chapter. One without lies. Before you leave tonight, check your bank statements this week. And tell me in the comments which city you are watching from. Subscribe so you do not miss more real stories about truth, betrayal, and justice here on Dad's Real Life Revenge. Thank you for sitting here with me until the very end. Keep your eyes open. Keep your heart peaceful. Goodbye for now, and I will see you again in the next story.